Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? So you can just find a comfortable position, and if you like sitting up, it's great, and if you would prefer to lay down, that's great too. I just would invite you to put a pillow under your knees so that your lower back will drop, and that way you'll be more comfortable for a longer period of time. So I'm going to go ahead and just get settled in. And you can close your eyes, or if that's not comfortable for you, just have a soft gaze about 3 or 4 feet in front of you on the floor. And that's just so we're not looking at anything in particular. We just want a soft gaze so that we're not disturbed by visual stuff. So go ahead and just take a moment to settle in. And if you have a dedicated mindfulness practice that you love, you're happy to use that this evening, and you can just let my words just kind of flow past you and just focus on your practice. Otherwise, if you're new to mindfulness, one of the things I would invite you to do is to use your breath to let you just begin to empty out your day. And so you can just take a couple of breaths to settle in. And then you can just do a light scan of noticing where you are in this moment. You might be feeling quite relaxed, or you may feel a lot of stress. And whatever you're noticing, to just first note that it's temporary. Conditions are such in this moment, but it'll change. And so just allowing yourself to also notice any tension or stress that might be present. For instance, you may notice some tightness or bracing in your body. And whatever physical tension you notice, I invite you to just gently allow your breath to release it. So it's as if you could just take that tension and just breathe it out on the out-breath. Just release it and let it go. And it's okay if it's still tense after you do that. You can just breathe it out again. You may have to breathe it out 5 times or 10 times, but eventually it'll release. So any tension in the body where you were bracing or tight, or perhaps we have some pain, just gently breathing it away. Or you may notice energy just rising out of your body, tension just rising off your body. Just let it go. We don't try to push it out or force it out. As I often say, it's more like allowing a butterfly to leave your hand. It's a very soft, gentle release. No pressure. You may notice that you might have some mental tension, maybe some racing thoughts or stressful thoughts. And if so, we can just gently breathe those out on the out-breath as well. You may feel energy rising out of the top of your head. If so, just allow it to go. No need to hold on to it. Tension or energy arises, and we just allow it to flow through us and empty back out into the universe. It's just energy. And we may also notice some tension or stress in our heart. We may have some stressful feelings, some sadness or fear, grief or anxiety. And if so, again, we just gently breathe it out on the out-breath. And with each out-breath, we're simply emptying, letting go of our day, letting go of all the extra energy. No need to carry it around. It's okay to arise and okay to let it go. If there's any sticky stories tonight, you can just imagine you just put them outside the door for right now. We can always pick them up later. We're just putting them down for just right now, just to have a moment of ease. And as we're emptying, we may find our body feels a little softer, or there's more space inside. Our shoulders drop. Or there's just a general softening. If so, allow that to happen. Allow that softening to be here. And let it get as big as it wants. No need to grow it, but just simply allow it. Letting go of the day and all the stories. And just being here. If stories begin again, just gently breathe them out until you notice it's empty and you feel the quiet and the peace again. And I invite you to let yourself settle in this quiet peace. Let go of thinking for a moment. Let go of time and just let it be timeless. And so it's as if this peacefulness is breathing. Peacefulness is breathing. We feel the gentle movement of that and the ease. And we just be here with peacefulness breathing. Letting peacefulness get as big as it wants. Again, not growing it, just allowing. If there's any extra energy, just allow it to rise off the body as peacefulness is breathing. So I've been watching kind of the world rev up in terms of this election week that we're in. And I don't know about you guys, but it seems like I've been seeing in social media and various emails and things, I've been seeing a lot more posting happening. It seems like everybody's getting in their last words, right? And it's like, this is getting me. Oh, and this too. And oh, one more thing. And so I'm watching, loved ones and family and friends and people just post. Hard to keep up with it all. And, some of it is along the lines of the, vote, and, here's one more thing to consider, or, here's one more piece of information you should have. But I'm also beginning to see some posts that are starting to say, what's it going to be like on the other side of this? What's going to happen to us in a week from now? Some of them are we going to be okay? Is this going to erupt into something big and scary? And then other people are like, is there any way for us to come back to center and come back to dialogue and those kinds of things? So just lots of different voices out there in the world this week. Makes sense. So I wanted to talk about how to get through this week, how we can kind of pay attention to some things that could really just kind of help center us. If you remember 2 weeks ago, I talked about permission to take care of our mind, our body, and our heart. And I talked about having little post-its around your house that every day you had permission to do something that was of caring for your mind, your body, and your heart. Something that stimulates you, feels good, nourishes you in some way. And then last week, I talked about caring for our community. I talked about how do we take care of our community. And if you remember, I spoke about 3 things that we could do. One was that we could use our mindfulness practices and our contemplative practices just to kind of come back to our center and to have clear seeing, because it's hard to have clear seeing when we're revved up. And then I talked about the importance of living within our values, really taking that time to check ourselves before we send that email, before we let that comment come out of our mouth. Like really asking the question, is this within my values? One way that I sometimes ask that is, I want to post something or I want to answer an email, and I often will read it and say, would I be okay with this email in a month from now, after all this heat has passed? And if I read it a month from now and it seems too hot or something, I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel like me. And so I'll go back and rewrite it and smooth it out. I might have to sit for a little bit and kind of do some mindfulness to get clear first. And then the third thing I talked about was generosity, that we could be generous in our communities. Remember, hold the door open for someone. Let them pass you at the intersection. Wave them on and say, no, you go first, even though you got there first. And how people just kind of respond. Or you say, hey, I love your dog. These little things that just build our neighborhood again and build our community. So those were some of the things I was talking about last week. And so this week, what I want to talk about is remember and release. And I'll just talk a little bit about what those 2 things mean. The first thing that I think is really helpful to keep our seat this week is this deep, deep remembrance of our interconnectedness, our community, our country, our love for each other. And as these days get going, you may still find that there's a lot of tension around othering. We're on this side, you're on that side, we know, you don't. This kind of othering mind. And it's so disruptive and it's so painful to go there. And so I wanted to talk about what is it we need to remember. And, this is a practice I have for myself in my own practice. And I find for myself it's a profound practice, actually. It's pretty quite profound. So the things to remember this week is that they, the infamous they over there, whatever that means, that they want the same exact things that I do. They want everything that I want. And so, for instance, they want to feel safe. They want safety in their life. They also want to be happy, just as I want to be happy. They want a healthy country. They really do. They want a healthy country too. And they also want freedom. And I want freedom. And so we have these things that are exactly the same. And as I've said before, it's like if we think about the hand, when we're all down here in the pool of this common ground, this is where we all connect and agree. So here is where safety, happiness, freedom, and I want a healthy country is. We all agree that that would be a good thing. Where we get in trouble is the how. And this is where we start to argue, is up here in the how. And so, the example I've used before is we all want safety. So some of us think, well, then we should have guns because then I'll be safe. And some of us think, well, no, there should be no guns because then that will make everybody safe. And so this is where we start to argue, is in the how, right here. And it's really amazing to kind of think about the sameness rather than our differences. And so I just want to invite you to this for just a moment. I invite you to just close your eyes for just a moment. And go ahead and just imagine whoever your they is. We'll do it politically this week since this is where we are. And just imagine that other political group over there. And take a moment to just see them doing what they're doing, putting out the news they're putting out, making the decisions, doing big political things they're doing across the country. And just take a moment in seeing them to just remember they want to be safe too, just as I do. They want to be happy and have well-being, just as I do. They want a healthy country as well. They're fighting for a healthy country, whatever that means. And they want protection of freedom, just as I do. And just take a moment to notice how that feels in your body. What happens to your system when you remember that they want what I want? And so I'm just curious, maybe a couple of people could just unmute themselves. What was that like when you just took that moment to think, oh, they want what I want? What was that like? You can just unmute yourself.
For me, all I heard mostly was, yeah, but.
So your mind kept going, yeah, but.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, and so you just...
The concept I totally do, and sometimes I'm really able to connect it. Today, I don't know why I'm having trouble with it.
Sure. And so, it's even interesting in that yeah, but there had to be something that relaxed for something to go, yeah, but, right? So you want to just pay attention to what is that relaxed? And then there was, yeah, but, right? Oh, if I let my guard down, but, right? So it's in that little moment of relaxing. Yeah. Anyone else? Maybe somebody else?
I thought of a fella down the street from me who has a big Trump flag out front, and I I really want to go talk to him. I mean, he's kind of he's my age, He's
Uh-huh.
kind of I ought to just go kind of, what's up, Ron? You know. But anyway, I felt warmly toward him. He's
Yeah,
not such a bad guy. He's an
exactly.
electrician.
Thank you. Yeah, that's beautiful. And if you go down the street to talk to somebody, bring an apple pie. Do a little generosity too, right? It's like, hey, or I bought it from the store, so I didn't make it and I couldn't give you any COVID, right? Something like that, something that feels safe. So thank you. Yeah, so most of us tend to have just a little ease. Even if there is a yeah, but, there's that moment of, there's a little softening that happens in our system. And what I want to say about, this part where we start to argue, really all that is, and it's really important to remember, is that it's a reflection of people's upbringing. It's a reflection of their conditioning. It's a reflection of their personal pain. A lot of times when you ask somebody, why are you fighting for something? And you seek to understand, they often have a personal story of pain that actually drives them, You'll hear them say something like, well, I lived through this thing, and I never want anyone to ever have to suffer that way again. And that's why I fight so vehemently for this. And once we hear their suffering, it's so much easier to have some compassion or to find a place of meeting together and saying, oh, I'm so sorry that happened for you. I totally get why you might believe that now, right? These aren't bad people. These are good people. I believe truly that everyone is inherently good. And what we're seeing acted out is people's pains and fear acted out. So if we can get underneath that, we often can reconnect with somebody's heart in a really sweet, sweet way. So just remembering that too, like, oh, this is their conditioning. Sometimes they've never, given their condition, they've never seen anything really out there from your perspective. It's always been skewed to them. I saw a story that came out, I guess it was the New York Times this week, that talked about how over 400 small papers have been being I don't know what's the word I would use, but being influenced, taken over or influenced by outside political groups. And it's like, so if your news is coming through these filters, that's all you're seeing. It's hard to have a different perspective. It's hard to get outside that. So we can hold that orientation. We can remember this person wants what I want. They want the same thing I want. And what I'm seeing is their conditioning. And can I hold my seat in love and compassion in this place to try to meet them? So there's this quote here by Ramana Maharishi, or actually no, it's Nisargadatta Maharishi. He says, you cannot be rid of your problems without abandoning your delusions. So you have to abandon your own delusion that this is the bad guy. You cannot be rid of your problems without abandoning your delusions. So you have to be rid of your own delusions in order to see with love, to see the other person more clearly. And so I said tonight was about remembrance and release. And so the second thing that we can do to help us keep our seat is to have an active practice of releasing this energy and tension and fear that rises up in us, right? And so I really want to encourage you guys over this next week to make a daily practice. I want to give you full permission for a daily practice to do the things that help you release your fears and tensions, right? So for some of us, it may be making a commitment to go outside and walk every day. Maybe you go out at lunch every day and take a walk, or you go out at sunset and you take a walk and watch the sunset. Something that just kind of clears your head, and big sky, and oh yeah, the rest of the world. I've been locked in my mind, in my tension all day. So taking walks is really powerful. Being in nature, if you can get in nature, it helps, especially in this beautiful autumn time. It can be really beautiful. Also doing some kind of mindfulness practice or centering practice. So if you have centering prayer practice or meditation practice, releasing practice. So you can totally use that practice to release the tension you're carrying in your mind, heart, and body every day. Yeah. And then there's also, if you believe in God, or you have a Christian-oriented practice, you may do a practice that's called giving over your burden, where you actually take your burden and you say to higher power or divine, please take my burden, take the burden of my mind, my body, and my heart today. And you just take all that stress and hand it over to the divine, to the universe, to that which is bigger and beyond us. And often people will find some relief when they hand it over. Okay, I'm not going to carry that fear. I'm going to let go and let God and see what happens. Those kinds of 12-step practices that we hear about sometimes. So those are beautiful practices. So any kind of release practice you can do every day to release this pent-up tension is going to help you be able to deal with what's coming over these next few days. Yeah. Here's this beautiful quote that I love. At the heart of the silent emptiness, there is born in me a sudden understanding. So when we empty out and we touch that silence that we touched earlier tonight, and we rest there, suddenly things get clearer. Suddenly we can kind of see the bigger picture. And we're not so wrapped up, we're not so entangled in everything, other people's fears. So at the heart of the silent emptiness, there is born in me a sudden understanding. So I invite you to touch into that emptiness and empty yourself of all this extra noise inside, all the buts that we're carrying, all the what ifs we're carrying. They haven't played out yet. Just try to stay here in the present moment. Stay in today, right? So, so this idea of remembering and releasing. We take care of our own system and we remember their goodness. This is how we come back to the conversation. This is how we come back to healing ourselves over this next week and in the weeks beyond, right? Because there's going to be pain and loss somewhere. There already is some pain and loss for people. And so coming back to these practices helps us keep our seat so that we can stay steady and we can listen deeply and we can seek to understand. My sense is that in the repairing of the dichotomy we've seen, this huge split we've seen happen in the United States, a lot of people would love that answer to be very simple. And I don't think it's a very simple answer. I think it's going to take integrity and listening and goodwill and willing to learn. We have to be willing to listen to the other side. Everybody has a jewel. There's always a gem on the other side. There's some truth that they're trying to desperately get us to see. And if we're really going to repair and come back into balance, we have to be willing to listen to that gem. We may not do it the same way that they would do it, but to hear the gem and say, oh, I hear you. Yeah, let's be in dialogue is so powerful. So I hope that you can invite these practices into yourself. Here's a quote. "The simplest questions are often the hardest to answer." So we can bring it down to simple things like, everybody just wants to be safe. Everybody just wants to be happy. Everybody wants a healthy country. Everybody wants freedom. Wow, really simple ideas. Beautiful, profound, simple ideas. And yet, the hardest to answer. Because we're dealing with so much difference in our conditioning. What is freedom to one person is terrifying to another. So can we hold this broader perspective, this loving, embracing perspective, and remember, oh yeah, that person wants the same as I do. I think if we can hold that all through this week, we don't have to get sucked into that riptide that wants to happen and pull us out to deep sea where we're in way over our head. And if you get really tired, really overwhelmed and burned out, that's where you come back to the release part. Take time to go do a walk, lay on the grass, be good to yourself. Do something to let all that extra energy out of your system. Take a hot bath. It could be awesome to just float in a tub and just let it all go. You know? Throw some Epsom salt in there too. It'll help you draw it out. So, I hope this is of use to your practice this week. This remember, deep remembering and releasing. Remembering and releasing. Yeah. I record these talks, so I'll make sure a copy of this is up on my webpage, maureenfallon-cyr.com. And that way you can listen to it again if you need a little reminder. Yeah. We're going to get through this together. We're going to get through this with love and belonging and remembering our neighbor. All these tensions are always temporary. They always have been. And this will be too. So may we remember who we really are. Who we really are. The love we have and the care. And the things we believe in, like freedom. So. And let's take a moment to share our intention. We'll just take a mindful moment, just as we're closing. So I invite you to just close your eyes. And just any extra tension you may be finding in your body, mind, or heart, just allowing that to bubble off for a moment. Just breathe it out, let it go. Or you could even take a step back inside yourself, in the background, letting all the noise be in front and just taking a quiet step into the background and notice it's quieter back there. And we just gently breathe and let go of anything extra. Any fears, any what ifs. All the fears are just waves. And we get to be the ocean. The ocean is bigger than all the waves. And may the peace that we find soothe us and keep us centered. May it ripple out of us in our thoughts, in our speech, our actions. Our attitude towards others. May this peace and stability cover the whole world, so that all beings can remember deep inside themselves their own peace and stability. May all beings know safety, happiness, and freedom. So thank you, everybody. If you want some additional support, you can always go on the webpage, and there's lots of audios and videos to watch. And may you be held in your life this week. There's so much going on with COVID and people spiking, getting sick, and the election and social media. May you find an island that you can rest on this week, where you have peace and sanity in the midst of all the chaos. Let the flood just go around you and just rest on the island, breathing peace.